You're listening to the Money Monopolizers podcast, helping you take control of your financial destiny. It's about time that we invest more in our financial literacy and work towards building generational wealth. If you think you're ready to do the same, then you've come to the right place. Alex, Marlon, y'all ready? Let's get this bread.
What's good, everybody? It's Alex Comunio here. We are back with episode 27 of the Money Monopolizers podcast. Happy New Year to y'all. I am here with my co-host, Marlon Walls. Marlon, how you doing today, bro?
Doing very good today, bro. Break's over now, so it's back to the grind. You know, we're about to get this last semester started up. Also, Happy New Year to everybody out there. I'm just ready for this semester to be over before we even get started. But I don't have much to say today. I think we were just ready to jump into this episode. How about you, bro?
I'm doing well. Yeah, it's not really, it is a lot going on, but I'm not going to really get into everything that we got going on right now, just because I feel like this episode might be a little longer than usual. So I want to save as much time as possible up front so we can, use that on the back end. But yeah, I'm doing well for the most part. Definitely excited to get into this episode. We got a great episode for y'all today. We are going to be talking about the Cashflow Quadrant and the 4 methods of making money, or 4 methods of income generation. So before we get into that real quick, though, I did want to address something that I had saw yesterday that was kind of funny to me. But when we always talk about choosing your mentors wisely, basically when we say that, because I'm sure y'all have heard us, if you listen to this show, you've heard us say that a few times. Pick your mentors wisely, and we're just kind of just saying be careful or be cognizant of the perspective that the person is giving you their advice, that advice is coming from, right? So it's always just being aware of that, because the advice could be coming from a different perspective that is not in line with what your goals are. So it could not be advice that should be applicable to you. But if you don't know that because you aren't aware of their perspective, then you wouldn't really know that. So I kind of just wanted to address that, just because there was some things that were said about that. But yeah.
Yeah, I feel you on that. I think the thing to keep in mind is just keep having your end goal in mind, like you mentioned. Like understand what your end goal is, and whoever mentor you're listening to, just know that they might have a different end goal than what you may have in mind. So make sure that correlates when you're listening to any particular person. I think that's just enough said with that.
Yeah, definitely. All right, yeah. So yeah, that's all we're gonna say on that. That was just in response to a couple critics, but it comes with the territory. I'm open. I'm welcome to all of the criticism, good and bad. So, yeah. But yeah, let's get into this episode. Like I said, we are talking Cashflow Quadrant, 4 methods of making money, or income generation, if you will. So this episode is really in reference to the book Cashflow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. If you've read that book, you'll probably have, you're very familiar with what we're about to talk about. But if you haven't, then you'll still gain a lot of value from it, even if you have, but it's just going to be from a different perspective. But yeah, I love that book. That is probably my favorite Kiyosaki book, even more so than Rich Dad Poor Dad, because it's just, I don't know, it's just like very, very eye-opening in the perspective that he gives. So yeah, let's get right into the episode though. So like I said, there's 4 primary methods of generating income, right? So the 4 methods are, you can either be an employee, self-employed, business owner, or an investor, right? So those are the 4 different quadrants, right? If you visually imagine it, it looks like a quadrant, right? 2 lines drawn and intersecting each other in the middle. And in the top left quadrant, you have the E, which is the employee. In the bottom left, you have the S, which is the self-employed. In the top right, you have the B, which is big business. And then in the bottom right, you have the I, which is for investors, right? So we're kind of just going to get into really what the differences are, like how different people operate from different quadrants, and what kind of mindsets and things, the differences between the 4 quadrants. So we're not really going to be bashing on any of them, sorry, but we're really just going to be, explaining how they're different. We're not necessarily saying any are better than others. Obviously we're biased on which ones we would prefer for us to be in, but we're just going to just state the facts, right? So that's kind of how this episode is going to be. But yeah, really, I think the biggest thing about each of these is understanding that in the way you operate in each quadrant is going to require a different set of skills and also a different mindset, right, in order to generate income in that quadrant. So that's really the biggest thing, the biggest difference. It's the mindset within each quadrant. And we talk all the time about mindsets. Y'all know how important that is to us. But I kind of did want to read an excerpt from that book real quick that really illustrated how I think powerful mindset is when looking at these 4 different quadrants and how they differ, right? So in the book Cashflow Quadrant, there was a part in the early chapters where Robert Kiyosaki was talking to his rich dad, and he asked him if he can explain the differences between each of the 4 income generation methods, which is each of the 4 quadrants, because his rich dad is the one that introduced the concept to him. And so he asked him to explain the differences, and his rich dad responded. He said, "I can't explain it over one lunch, but how we respond to those differences is what causes us to remain in one quadrant or another. When your dad tried to cross," referring to his poor dad, he said, "when your poor dad tried to cross over from the E quadrant to the B quadrant, intellectually, he could understand the process, but he couldn't handle it emotionally. When things do not go smoothly, he began to lose money. He did not know what to do to solve the problems. So he went back to the quadrant he felt most comfortable in, the E and sometimes S quadrant." Rich Dad nodded his head and said, "When the fear of losing money and failing becomes too painful inside, a fear we both have, he chooses to seek security and I choose to seek freedom." So that is kind of the biggest mindset application with each of these quadrants, is how you respond to freedom, how you respond to fear. That's like the way that's going to determine how you operate in each, or why you operate in whichever quadrant you do, and why your mindset is the way you do is how you respond to fear. Because it really goes way beyond the technicalities of each quadrant. It's just really it comes down to how they respond to fear, and each one responds to fear differently. All right. So we're going to kind of get into that, but overall, I think everyone, it's not saying that if you have a certain mindset, you can only be in this quadrant. Everyone should definitely be trying to earn income in all 4 quadrants, or at least, diversifying in as many as they possibly can.
Yep. And with that being said, I think it's important to note that the quadrant that you earn the most from is probably going to be dictated by your mindset or your core values, as I like to say, as Alex was alluding to a lot of times. It's not so much your intellect or what you know, it's more so how you respond to these moments where you're placed in like a fear type situation, and what type of core values do you fall back on. So that's going to be like a theme throughout this entire episode. So be listening out for that, because you're going to see that come into place with each quadrant that we talk about. And this is usually some of these core values are probably things that's been conditioned into you at like an early age. So understand that what you're teaching your kids or what you were taught at an early age will affect what quadrant you get into as you get older.
Yeah. So let's get right into it then. So the first quadrant, E, is the employee, right? So what does that quadrant look like for someone that's in the employee quadrant, which I would assume is 90 to 99% of people, especially those that are probably listening. But pretty much the E quadrant is when you are operating that quadrant, you own a job. When you're an employee, you own a job and you trade in your time for money, right? So that's essentially what happens. And this doesn't matter what level you're on. You could be, earning $1 million, or you can be earning $7.25 an hour, right? It could be a CEO, it could be a janitor of a company. It doesn't matter. If you're an E, you're an E. You trading your time in for money, right? The quadrant don't care about status. It's just, how are you earning that money? So how do these people in the E quadrant respond to fear? These people respond to fear primarily, by seeking job security and agreements that come with a degree of certainty, right? So when we say fear, in this case, I am referring to, fear of not being able to pay the bills, fear of not being able to put food on the table, fear of not getting paid, fear of just of fear of instability, right? That's how do they respond to that, right? And usually these people, anyone that's an employee, right, you want a salary because a salary means you get guaranteed pay. You want benefits because benefits mean you get guaranteed protection in the case of any accidents or any of those things that benefits cover. You want PTO because that means you get guaranteed time off. So it's kind of like those are the top three things that you seek as a employee because those things are going to sit well with you in terms of how you respond to fear of not being able to provide for yourself or your family. Those things will help you get through that or overcome that fear, I guess, if you will. So for these people, I mean, I think of them as like anyone that's an employee that like is okay with being an employee forever. They kind of, for them, the idea of security is more important than maximizing their earning potential, right? That's maximizing their earning potential. You can say it's important, but if they had a choice for most people between like, job security and earning, a few thousand more, most of those people would pick the job security because they know with that, at least they'll always have that income coming in.
Yeah. And see, you already see that the core values are starting to fall into place. Like for employees, they value security. That's something that they feel like is a high importance. That's what they need to be weighing when they're talking about what quadrant they want to get into or what they need to be seeking for after they leave high school or college or whatever. Like I know Robert Kiyosaki talks in Rich Dad Poor Dad. He might mention in Cashflow Quadrant too, that his poor dad used to always tell him that you should always strive to get a safe and secure job with benefits. And that's pretty much you being incentivized to keep trading in your time for continuous years in order to have that feeling of protection, that form of security, and security in the form of salary, benefits, PTO, everything that you just described. And there's nothing wrong with it necessarily, but that's putting you into that E quadrant though. So you understand what you're being told at a young age. You get that safe and secure job is putting you into a certain quadrant. So just be mindful of that.
Yeah, definitely. And like we said, we're not bashing anyone. We're just saying this is how they operate, right? This is how we're going to go through it for each one. So, like Marlon just said, this is based off of like the core values that they have. A lot of the things that they believe, it's because it was taught to them as the most important thing that they should be seeking, right? They were taught that they should be seeking, job security instead of financial security or financial freedom, even on another level. So, that's honestly the main reason that most of society is in this quadrant. Probably 90% of people operate in this quadrant for their primary income method or primary income generation method. So that's why they're taught to seek the security, and then after that they get, most of the time how the pattern goes, they get trapped into debt. So now they don't have any freedom to leave their job even if they wanted to, because they have a mortgage, they have student loans, they have car notes, they have all these liabilities now, and they can't leave their job now, even if they wanted to. So, and then on top of that, most of these people think they operate in the mindset of more money, more money, more money. So, as they get promotions and raises, they get deeper into debt, and they end up paying more and more taxes, and the cycle just kind of repeats itself and continues, right? So, and speaking of taxes too, just because I mentioned it, I think, taxes, and we're going to talk about it for each quadrant, but taxes, you got to understand, are your largest expense for everyone. It doesn't matter what quadrant you're in. Taxes are going to, well, I said that sparingly, but definitely for the majority of people, taxes are your largest expense. And the E's, honestly, they probably pay the most in taxes. Like, they're up there with the S's, because the S's, we'll get into that in a little bit, but the E's probably, you can just say they pay the most in taxes, generally speaking, right? And that's because for employees, there are not many deductions to take advantage of besides your mortgage insurance and your property taxes. Those are really the only two deductions that, an employee can take advantage of to reduce their tax burden. So essentially what happens whenever you're an employee is you become a 50-50 partner with the government. Shoot, before you even get to see your paycheck, the government already got their cut. Uncle Sam said, appreciate that, bro. I'm good. All right, bro, you got to rest. He took a good chunk already. But that's just kind of how the cycle goes. And the more money you make, the more you're going to pay. So understand that, because that is your largest expense. And a lot of people, they had a awful mindset when it comes to taxes, and then a lot of that correlates to capitalism and all of those other things too. But that's just kind of how it is. And also understand too that taxes are only going to be going up for the employees, right? They only are going to be going up because baby boomers are about to start retiring, and that means now they're moving from being a tax-paying citizen into someone that needs government assistance in the form of Social Security, if that's going to be around, and Medicare and all that other stuff. So who do y'all think is going to be the ones paying for that whenever the taxes are needed? It's going to be the people in the E quadrant. So it ain't going to be me, because I ain't going to be in that quadrant, but it's going to be the people in the E quadrant. So, bro, just understand that.
Yeah, and I mean, with taxes, understand nobody likes to pay taxes. Now, some people do something about it, and some people complain about it, but nobody likes paying taxes. And like Alex was trying to mention, prior to deductions, I would say that is the single biggest expense that an American will have to pay, because you're talking about income tax, sales tax, property tax, land tax, whatever. There's so many taxes that are in this country that you inevitably pay more for taxes than you do on any other expense, even your housing. I know we talk a lot about house hacking. You pay more in taxes than you will pay for your mortgage. If you have a mortgage or your rent, you can pay more in taxes collectively than you will in any housing expense. Yeah. And so now, imagine starting to eliminate this largest expense, these taxes, and doing it legally. So now that's why you see a lot of people, big businesses like Amazon, paying little to no money in taxes. And this is a true way to start building wealth. Like, I know like I said, we mentioned house hacking before. We save a large chunk of money through house hacking, and that's just us eliminating our monthly mortgage expense. But if you eliminate taxes, which is something you can do, as you talk to get to that later with the quadrants on the right, you'll really be able to start building wealth and saving them, then building wealth on top of that. And some people in the E and S quadrant try to trick themselves because they just, I don't know, they want to cope with not having to pay so much taxes by saying, if I pay a lot of taxes, I must make a lot of money. And no, honestly, that's just a poor mindset, because just because you make more money doesn't mean that, just because you're paying high taxes doesn't mean that you are automatically making the most money. Because as you'll see later on with the B and I quadrant, those are the ones who are making more money but still paying less in taxes. It's just a misconception for highly paid employees and also self-employed people, which we'll talk about next with the S quadrant.
Yeah. And that's a good point too. I think all that ties back to lack of financial intelligence, because when how taxes work and how the game is played, you're gonna understand why things are the way they are, right? And the only way you can get that is if you have the financial intelligence to understand that. So that's a good point. And since you just mentioned self-employed people, I think we should get into that quadrant too. So let's talk about that one, the S quadrant, the bottom left. So the S quadrant is self-employed people. So self-employed, when we say this, we mean people that essentially work for themselves and they trade in their time for money also, right? So this can be, plumbers, real estate agents, people that own cleaning companies that just are themselves. It could be highly trained professionals like doctors, lawyers, dentists that have, and, for the latter, doctors, lawyers, and dentists, those people typically, because most people think of them in the sense of an employee, but they are, for a lot of them, they can be an employee, but they can also be self-employed, because a lot of them can open their own practices and law firms and those kind of things. And they can, kind of just have private practice and that kind of stuff, and pretty much work for themselves in that sense. Because they are specialized to pretty much do whatever they can do. So, that's kind of how that works. And for a lot of these people, if the way you can think about it is, if in terms of the cash flow quadrant, if they go on vacation, then so does their income, because they are essentially the system that generates the money, right? And we're going to talk about that a little more when we talk about B's, but they are the system that generates the money. So without them, there is no money. So that's kind of how they operate. And for a lot of them, they kind of, those are the people that, they like to be their own boss and do their own thing. Those are the kind of things that you hear those people say. And for them, we're talking about mindset and how they respond to fear with each of these. For them, a lot of these people, the way they respond to fear is by taking control of the situation themselves. How do they respond to fear of not making money? or a fear of not being able to pay the bills. Well, those are the people that say, okay, I'm going to go get a door-to-door sales job or a commission-paying job as a real estate agent, or, you know, something where I can, you know, dictate how much earning potential I can actually make, as opposed to letting someone else dictate what my earning potential will be, right? So that's kind of how they operate. But really the biggest downfall of these people, I think, in my opinion, is that these people are really hesitant to delegate, because they are really like the people that think they can do it the best. I mean, it's not to say all of them are like that, but if you think about a typical, you know, plumber or like a self-employed person, or real estate agent, most of them, it's just them that operate that business. Like I said, they are the system, right? Even if you think of a dentist, right? If you think of a dentist, if I have to go to the dentist and I need to get my teeth cleaned, I'm gonna go to the dentist, and he or she could probably do, you know, all of the work that is needed to be done on my teeth without anyone else really doing anything, or having to work on me. So and most dentist offices, they operate as, you know, private practices. That's why you'll see, like, you know, their name on the front of the buildings, because it is their business, and they'll say comma DDS. But that's kind of that mindset, and as how they operate. And two, since you know, the taxes are important to mention here too. The reason I said earlier that self-employed people might pay the most taxes is because you got to think of it in a sense of like how much, you know, the taxes are, how much of the, you know, revenue is being passed down to them. So as an employee, you know, or as a self-employed person, they're going to be responsible for their own taxes and also the business taxes. So for a lot of self-employed people, they end up going out of business because they have to account for them taxes themselves and pay them when the time's due. So when it comes tax season, you know, as opposed to the government having taken out the money all year long, they have to account for it and put money aside for it. So a lot of times these people, it'll come time to pay taxes and they'll have spent all their bread because they weren't really cognizant of that fact, and they end up going out of business. So that's really that is a huge mindset shift in itself, just alone talking about how, you know, the taxes thing. Because when you're so used to the government just taking your money out of your taxes, you kind of just get used to that, and you never really worried about it. You just go to TurboTax and do your W-2 at the, you know, in April or whatever. But now when you got to account for your business expenses and your own income expenses, okay, it's a whole different world now. So, you know, that's a whole different mindset that those people got to get into.
Mm-hmm. While the mindset of starting a small business isn't bad, like I applaud the small bit, well, the S quadrant, the self-employed for it. The problem is that they're, like Alex was talking about, they do everything solo. So that's why Robert Kiyosaki also names them the solo act, because they tend to work in their business as the sole employee instead of working on their business and hiring other people to help them with the business or run the business for them. And because of this, their core values is into independence, and not having to work on somebody else's accord or on somebody else's time, somebody telling them when to work, like just like an employee, you're not working for somebody else, you work for yourself. They care about more money but they're still trading time for it at the same time. So they're trying to have a production-based job. Like I know Alex mentioned plumbers, real estate agents, doctors, lawyers. These are people that you'll find in the S quadrant. They may make more money, but at the same time, they're spending more time in order to do it. And honestly, schools are programming both E and S quadrant people at the end of the day, because the status quo in America is to go to school, get a nice, safe, and secure job, get that steady paycheck, insurance, benefits, and that's all the E quadrant stuff. And if you want to make more money, now they're saying, okay, you can become a doctor, a lawyer, a small business owner, and that's the S quadrant. Yeah. And both of these embody saving, getting out of debt, and then having a good retirement plan. I think that's something that some core values that will be shared between both E and S quadrant. And the fact of the matter is, neither one of these two ways will allow you to get wealthy. Like you won't get wealthy by just strictly saving your money, and especially not early on in life, because like I think Alex mentioned this before, it's like physically impossible to gain the mass amounts of wealth that business owners and investors do just by completely saving your money. And that's one thing that is a value of E and S as opposed to B and I quadrants. And if wealth is the goal for you, understand that you had to have if wealth is the goal for you, you need to have a goal of what you're going to do with your saved money. And so I think that's one thing we want to start getting into is talking about how saving your money will allow you to invest for larger returns later on that will get you toward the right side of your graph, which is your business and investment quadrants.
Yeah, and I want to mention too, before we get into that side, understand that the system in America as it is today and as it has been for the past 100 some odd years, it's designed to keep people on the E and the S side quadrant. It is not designed for you to be on the right side of the quadrant. That is up to you. So the school system, that whole, wake up early, get off at 4, go back home and you repeat that cycle, that whole, that's industrial age stuff. Designed really whenever the war was happening and we needed people to do these jobs. So that's kind of the system that we're still operating on. We needed people to do manufacturing jobs and production line jobs and all those other kind of jobs where just that's all you do and you don't really get any you don't really get any other benefit from it. So school and that whole system was designed to keep people on the E and S side. If you want to move to the B and I, which we're about to get into, that right side, then you have to take that initiative upon yourself to gain that financial intelligence and learn how that other side works, because you're not going to learn that in school, and complaining about it ain't going to do nothing for you. So understand that moving forward. So let's talk about though the right side of the quadrant. This is the fun part now. I told y'all we were biased. I told y'all I was biased. So this is, the stuff.
Biased but objective.
Yeah, shoot. This is you can call me objective, subjective, whatever. I love this side. This is the side to be on for me. So let's talk about it though. So the top right quadrant, the business owner. So a business owner, in this sense, is someone that owns a business that generates them income, right? So they have, when you talk about this is way different from a self-employed person, right? There's a difference between having a self-employed business and owning a big business, because a big business, you typically have systems that work for you and people that operate these systems that are going to create money for you, right? So that's kind of how it can work. It can look. And for a lot, a lot of people can move to this side. There's really two ways. There's a couple ways, but there's a few ways, but the two main ways to get onto the B side is either creating your own business, right? So that's the traditional business where you create the systems yourself. You train the people yourself. You tell them how the systems work and they generate the money for you from the ground up. You do that yourself, right? That's the traditional way to create the business. That's how most businesses have gotten to where they are today. Or you can franchise, which is essentially where you buy a system. You're already buying a business that owns systems, and you just need them to operate the way that they say you should operate them, right? So that's McDonald's, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, Popeyes. All those places are systems that are already in place that you as an entrepreneur or an investor can go purchase and own one of those systems that can generate you money. So, but a lot of people go wrong here too, is whenever they try to go buy a system and then they say, well, I'm going to do it this way. Nah, you don't get to tell McDonald's how to run their system. McDonald's going to tell you how they want their system ran, and you just going to do what they say. That's the way it's going to work. So, that's a whole, there's a lot of lawsuits and stuff when that happens, but, you could imagine. So like I said, this is different from the S because these people, they like to delegate, right? They actually surround themselves with people from all quadrants. So they have people in the I quadrant. They have people in the S quadrant. They have people also in the B quadrant. They have people in the I quadrant that work on their business, that help their business run, right? And a lot of S's, they try to become B's, but like we said from the beginning, a certain mindset shift is required to become a B. You can't just hop over into the side and just think it's going to be the same thing. You got to have that mindset to be a B. You got to, be able to delegate stuff. For a lot of Bs, they can. One of the perks of being a B is the fact that you can leave your company and the money ain't gonna stop coming. So that means you can be on vacation and your income is still going to come, as opposed to an S, where if you leave, then the money's going to stop, because these systems that they have created freedom for the business owners. That's the biggest thing. That's the hardest transition for a lot of business owners, is creating those systems, right? The reason most people really, I mean, if you think about it, the reason most people never become Bs is because, like I said earlier, 90% of people are E's, right? And most people in the E quadrant, they see the systems that are a part of their daily job that they go to every day, and they see how those systems work that they are a part of, and they think it's, they just think it's too hard or too risky to actually create that kind of thing for themselves, right? That is a whole nother realm of thinking. It's way different from going to your desk and just doing a certain job every day mindlessly. That's one line of thinking, as opposed to going and being able to lead, number one, people, and being able to know how systems operate. That's two completely different mind shifts. So that's why most people can never make that transition, or most people will never, even when they try, they fail at becoming successful business owners, right? Because a lot of people, especially on the left side of the quadrant, they focus too much on the product itself or the service that they're doing, as opposed to these systems, right? The systems is that's where you create the money and the freedom. Because if you, I said this before in a YouTube video I did when I kind of talked about this subject, but if you ask most people, can they create a better burger than McDonald's? Most people can say, yeah, they can create a better burger than McDonald's, right? But if you ask most people, can they create a better system than McDonald's? Probably not. The McDonald's system has been perfected, right? Everything, you can just go to McDonald's and watch how that burger or whatever you order is getting delivered to you. It is in a perfect system that works, flawlessly. The only thing you're gonna get that ain't gonna work at McDonald's is the ice cream machine. But you can call that a part of the system too, because when you go into McDonald's, the ice cream machine ain't gonna work. Shoot, that's part of the system too. You might as well be, because it ain't a McDonald's I've been to in years that has a ice cream machine that worked. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. The left side is always focusing, the E's and the S, they focus on the burger instead of the system that's delivering that burger, right? A lot of people can create that product, but not many people can create that system. The systems is where the value is.
All I hear over and over is mindset and core values, my dude, because I'm thinking about the S quadrant versus B quadrant. With the S quadrant, like I said, they're the solo act. They trying to do everything by themselves. So that means that if their business, if they're not in their business running it, that means business is collapsing at the end of the day. And that's honestly, that goes back, like I keep saying, it goes back to schooling, because if you think about it, when you're in school, if you're operating as a team on like a test, what does that mean? You're cheating. And so people take that same mindset into the real world. So they're like, oh no, I can't work with others. This is especially with self-employed people. They're like, I can't work with others. I got to do everything myself, because it's all about what I know and what I need to do. So that's strictly opposed to how B quadrants think about how to run a business. Instead, they want to build good systems. They want to build networks. They're trying to surround themselves with people who are smarter than them in order to run the business for them at the end of the day. Because the business B quadrant understands that the people are supposed to be the one that ultimately end up running the business, not the person that's in the B quadrant, because what their mindset or their core values that they're trying to cater to is time freedom. They're trying to remove themselves from the business and allow other people to run the business for them. And up front, so they're thinking early on, like before they start the business, they're thinking, why would you want to work hard on something that you'll never own and you can get fired from tomorrow? That's like the employees or the self-employed. They're like, well, why would I spend all my time working on that? Instead, I can be working on using that, I can be working hard and using that energy to build businesses that's going to allow me to remove myself at some point. That means I own it, and I'll get to pass down all the wealth that it's creating for generations to come. Essentially, I'm working hard for a few years, and I'm going to be able to live the rest of my life, possibly for my children's lives, with the income still flowing to us in the form of passive income. That's the biggest fundamental difference between self-employed and business quadrant people.
Mm-hmm. Woo! That's a fact. So it's like, I mean, the biggest thing from that whole thing too, to me, or one big thing too to note, is the importance of financial literacy, right, and financial intelligence. In the book, the way that in the Cashflow Quadrant book, the way that Rich Dad defined financial intelligence is, as he says, financial intelligence is not so much how much you make, it's how much you keep, how hard that money works for you, and how many generations you keep it for. And that whole that mindset is that's the mindset that you take into a B quadrant. That's the mindset that's going to generate you income as a B, right? And since we've been talking about taxes for all of them, we got to also talk about taxes for, the B quadrant, because this besides mindset, the taxes is probably the biggest difference, or one of the biggest, definitely the biggest technical difference in terms of like the difference in operation between them. And for the B quadrant, in my opinion, that's probably the best place to be operating in regards to taxes. We're going to talk about the I's, but the B's is probably the best, man. I can't.
That's your Amazon's right there.
Yeah, this is the best place to be, because most people, you got to understand that a lot of people don't understand how taxes work, and they don't understand the reason we have taxes, they understand the reason, but they don't understand why taxes are levied the way they're taxed, or the way they are against certain individuals, right? You have to understand that taxes are just an incentive system to provide services to society. I mentioned this before in a previous episode a while back. I don't remember which one, but they're just an incentive system to provide a service or anything to society. You have to look at the IRS as your business partner in this sense, right? Because depending on what you do for society will depend on how much of a cut they take. As a business owner, you can do things that the government can't do, right? You can invest in real estate to provide housing for people. You can sell services and products to provide a surplus of capital into the economy. You can create jobs, right? These are things that the government can't necessarily focus on, so they'll reward you with major tax breaks, right? Amazon paid 0% in taxes in 2018. 0%. Amazon they made, I think, $11 billion in 2018, and they paid $0 in taxes on it. People were pissed about that. They were pissed.
60 of some of America's biggest companies reportedly paid no federal income tax for 2018, despite earning billions of dollars in profits. This, according to a new report from the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy. On that list, Amazon, as you well know from Bernie Sanders, as well as Netflix, Delta, JetBlue, IBM, and General Motors. In total, the 60 companies paid no federal income tax on $79 billion in pre-tax income. Does this hit on a flaw in our tax system that the Trump tax cuts should have addressed?
Anybody here know how much Amazon paid in taxes last year? Here you have a corporation that made over $10 billion in profits, owned by the wealthiest guy in the world, and they paid zero in taxes. We will no longer accept the absurd situation where large corporations like Amazon, Netflix, and General Motors pay nothing in federal income tax.
But it's like, bro, they understand how the game works, right? I remember, because I was curious. I think they accounted for, I think 0.04% of the GDP in 2018, which is insane to think about. One company accounting for that much of, I know 0.04% don't sound a lot, but when you're talking about, trillions of dollars of the GDP, that is a lot. And then they accounted, I think when I looked further into it, they accounted for, and don't quote me on that, I might be completely wrong, but I think that's what I remember seeing. And I looked further into it, and I think they accounted for like 44% of e-commerce sales in 2018. 44, they damn near have a monopoly on e-commerce.
One company, my dude.
Yes. So you gotta realize what they are doing for the economy, right? When they're doing that, they are a significant. I'm not saying if Amazon goes down, the economy goes tank. No, I'm not saying that. But they are doing something that the government can't necessarily do themselves. And within that too, they are also creating jobs for people. Now, how good of quality those jobs are is another story, because I've heard some, bad stuff about some of them Amazon employees. I would never work for them, but that's what they're doing. And as an employee, you just can't take advantage of that. Because, I mean, I'm gonna be honest, you as an employee, you're not really providing anything for society. Yes, you are providing something for your company that is in turn providing something for society, but you as an individual are not doing anything to contribute to. Bro, I want to say it and it sounds cynical. It's no way to like say it without sounding like bad, but I mean, bro, it's not, as an employee, you're not really doing anything that the government can be like, oh yeah, we'll give you a tax break for that. All right. So they're going to take their cut. They're going to take their 40%, 30%, whatever your tax bracket you in. So, and a lot of people don't really understand that concept because most people just think that if you're a millionaire, you should just pay a lot in taxes, right? That's so ignorant. That's ignorant. And that's especially what I see when we talk about capitalism versus socialism and all those kind of things. I'm not going to get into that. That's a whole nother debate. But that's kind of one of the things you see. And the craziest thing about that is, bro, there's people that earn $1 million salaries in the E quadrant. Those people are getting cooked when it comes to tax. Bro, they paying the top of they're at the top of the tax bracket. They paying damn near 40% in taxes. The government, they working with the government. The government said appreciate that, bro. They might as well have their name on their rental, on their leases and stuff, because they might as well just be partners like that. But that's kind of how it goes. The government rewards people on the right side of the quadrant because they are the producers in society. The left side are the consumers. Well, it's really the E's. The S's do stuff, but we're not talking on a magnified scale. On the left side is really the consumers and the right side are the producers, right? But I mean, bro, there's 74,000 pages in the tax code, bro. The first 30 tell you what you have to pay, and the rest tell you how not to pay. You have to be able to take advantage of that, right? And I'm not saying go read the IRS tax code, but that's the gist I'm trying to get across. The tax code was built for business owners, not built for employees. It was built for business owners to take advantage of, really. And I mean, as you can look as history has gone on, the tax code hasn't always been 74,000 pages. Obviously, after Obama was president, I think they added, a few thousand whenever he talked about the Affordable Care Act and introduced that. So, it gets bigger every year. But always what's being added is deductions for business owners and ways they can avoid taxes. That's always going to be there. So it doesn't matter, when you start doing that, right? It's just a matter of doing it, right? This is the easiest time in history to make money in the B quadrant, for real. It's the easiest time in history because of the internet. There was 12 million millionaires. I looked this up, I think yesterday, actually. There was 12 million millionaires in the U.S. as of 2019, and 250,000 of them became millionaires in 2019. And if I had to bet, if I was a betting man, I would bet that a majority of them leveraged the internet to create their wealth, whether that was, through selling something or whatever. I would bet that they leveraged it, right? And, that's what you kind of got to do. Go start an e-commerce business if you want. Do something. Sell something. Just use the internet to earn income because it's so powerful. There's so many ways. Selling a service, whatever the case may be, just sell anything but your time. That's pretty much what we're saying here. If you want to get tax benefits, you got to sell something other than your time.
For sure, bro. And I do want to mention, because you was talking about it earlier, like the pioneers is really who you need to be looking at. So when I'm saying pioneers, I'm talking about the people who originally have the idea to start the business. Those are the ones who are going to be getting the biggest tax benefits. By understanding tax code, you can learn how to take advantage of it by either building a business or investing. That's what we keep talking about. But the more you do for society, as ultimately, like the takeaway is, the more you do for society, the more tax incentives you can take advantage of. Now, if you don't take advantage of them, that's on you. Become a student in whatever it is you want to do. If you want to build a business, if you want to invest, become a student of that business or investment. Because this is the number one reason people are shying away from going into business and investments, because they fear the unknown. They don't know what's going to happen. They fear it's too much work. It's all about fear. It's just like, I don't know. It's just a fear of what may happen, or a fear of failure, honestly, is what it really is. And people on that E and S quadrant, they like predictability. They like security. That's their core values. So they fall to what? The left side of the graph, E and S. In order to mitigate this fear, and move toward the B and I, what do you need to do? educate yourself in that subject, whatever it may be. You can ask Alex. He's starting a new business venture right now, and what is he doing right now?
Education, education, education.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, if you educate yourself, you will mitigate your fear of whatever business venture you're trying to get into. And then it's not going to seem so risky anymore. It's going to just make sense at that point.
Mm-hmm. Facts. It's going to give you that confidence, right? And bro, it's education before compensation all the time. You ain't going to get no bread without, learning how it's going to be done first.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, you are going to learn how to benefit tax wise. Whenever you start studying it, naturally, you're going to learn how to pay less in taxes, right? It's just a matter of switching your mindset and getting on the other side of that register. That's it.
Yep.
So let's transition now to the last quadrant, the bottom right quadrant, the I quadrant, which is the investors. So this is the best quadrant to be in my opinion. Well, I love that.
I'm about to say, I
that.
just said the B was your favorite. Now it's the I. Like, bro, make up your mind.
No. I'm on the gas. I'm on the gas. I love the B quadrant, but the I quadrant is a great place to play. People in the I quadrant pretty much is anyone that owns investments, right? So what that means is money works for them. Money creates money in that sense. Robert Kiyosaki calls this the playground of the rich. And where money is converted to wealth. Here you can and this is where a lot of business owners come and operate too. They kind of cycle back and forth between the two quadrants, the B and the I, and just profits come to become investments. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how that works. The majority of wealthy people earn 70% of their income from the I quadrant and only 30% of the income from the E quadrant. And you can bet in that E quadrant, they're not working for somebody else. It's their own company that they're working for, right? So they're the CEO or the president of that own company, right? So, but I think it's important for everybody to be operating in this quadrant, no matter what quadrant you're currently in or how much money you make. You need to find a way to start getting into this quadrant. And if that means living below your means, then so be it, right? Because this is where wealth is created, right? Money is converted to wealth here. It doesn't matter how much money you start out with. Money will be converted to wealth due to the compound effect. This is what happens in this quadrant. Beautiful things happen in this quadrant. I promise. I've seen some beautiful things happen here. But like I said, everyone needs to be operating in this way. And when I say that, I'm not saying a 401k. That's not what I mean. I'm not talking about a 401k because I know most people on the left side of the quadrant really don't understand that saving money isn't investing money, right? And yes, technically a 401k, like I said, is investing, but in reality, you're just saving for retirement. You don't know what's happening with your money when you put it. For most people, they don't know what's happening in their money when you put it in a 401k because you're 4 degrees removed from it. You put your money in a 401k or whatever, and it's 3 degrees away at someone that controls a mutual fund has it. So you don't even really know what they're investing in. You can kind of pick and choose a little bit, but you don't know what's going to happen. You don't have that much control. And for a lot of people here, you could have millions, or a lot of people on the left side, I'll say, you can have millions in a retirement account. But if something happens that's out of your control, it's gone. And all you got to do is just ask the people that were 65 in 2009. Ask them what happened to their 401k. Ask them how much money they lost, and you could kind of see what I mean by that, right? Because another thing too, I think a lot of people associate the I quadrant too with their primary residence or their house, and a lot of people think that their primary residence is an asset, or they think that their house is an asset or an investment. But I mean, it is an asset, but you got to understand whose asset it is. It's not your asset. It's the bank's asset because a mortgage is a liability. Really, all you got to do is look at the amortization schedule, and you can really see that a mortgage is not an asset. It is a liability because even when you pay off the mortgage, you still don't own the house. It's still a liability too because you have to pay the property taxes, and it's not cash flowing. I dare you not to pay the property taxes and see what's going to happen to your house. Just take a house, like let's say you buy a house for $100,000, right? And you put $20K down on it, and you borrow the rest of the remaining $80,000 at 5%. After 30 years, you're gonna pay $154,000 in interest on that house. Now, to me, $154,000 seems to be a little bit higher than 5% of $80,000, right? So what is the bank really getting from you if you look at it like that, right? It's really 192% over those 30 years. You can do those back calculations. So and the thing about that too is that banks know that most people aren't going to own the house that they, buy for 30 years. For a lot of, they're in the banking industry, they use a 7-year average as the life expectancy for a mortgage, right? So that means they expect you to buy a new house or refinance it after every 7 years. So that means they're going to get their 80,000 back, and they're going to get the $49,000 of interest that you just paid after those 7 years, right? Bro, your house is not an investment. Don't think it is, because even the word itself, the word mortgage is a derivative of the Latin word mortuus, which means dead, and the French word gage, which means pledge. So it translates to mean a pledge until death. So it was never set up for you to think it was an investment. It's a liability on your income statement, but it's an asset on the bank's income statement. So in this case, the bank is the one in the I quadrant, not you. So understand that and get that stigma out about your house being an asset, your house being an investment. It's not. But yeah, I did want to mention that a lot of the people on the right side, because we've been talking about mindset and fear, the way that the people on the right side of the quadrant, B's and I's, the way that they respond to fear is by seeking financial freedom. They understand that a different path requires a different mindset, right? And that school doesn't teach you the correct mindset that you had to be operating in order to be on the right side of the quadrant, or of the graph, if you will. So that's, if you think about it, that's why Bill Gates, he could drop out of Harvard and still become a billionaire, because he understood that. He understood all he had to do was create a business that provide a service that people needed, or an object or something that society needed, and it would in turn provide him financial freedom, which could be, you could think of his response to fear, right? For these people, they don't seek job security as their end all. They know that it requires strong financial intelligence in order to become someone that is successful on the right side of this whole thing, right? And that's the biggest takeaway to really understand with that.
Yep. At the end of the day, I just keep going back to core values, bro, because with investors and with business owners, you're talking about their core values is that financial freedom piece that you're talking about. Also time freedom, because like with business owners, you say that they own a business and the people are making them money. With investors, their money is making them money. With money, what does that mean? I don't have to work now. And if I don't have to work, I have time freedom. So and financial freedom, all my money is paying for my expenses. So with financial and time freedom, that was their ultimate goal in life. So this is why that's why they're in that quadrant. So that's what their goal is the financial and time freedom. So they picked which quadrant matches up with that. That's the B or the I, whichever one matches up to your goals and beliefs is the one that you should pursue. Yep. And that's why we keep saying the quadrant that you're in is dictated by your mindset or your core values. So and to be in one of these quadrants on the right, you have to change that mindset of the ENS, the employee or the self-employed, to the mindset of a B or I, if you want to make that transition. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's a great way to think of it too, because that's really all it is at the end of the day. It's a mindset shift. It's not about the technicalities of it. It's not about earning a certain amount of income. It's not about, all that. It's about mindset shift and financial intelligence. That's the two biggest things. And then all the other stuff will come with it. So It's a great point. I think people got to understand that there are trillions of dollars circulating in the economy that are looking for a safe place to be invested. Seriously, there's so much money that is just roaming around, bouncing from place to place, trying to just find a place to just be invested and be returned. But most people don't know how to invest it because they don't have that financial intelligence. That's so important to have on this right side to be in one of these quadrants, right? Because like I said earlier, a lot of people focus too much on the money and not the financial intelligence. When you have the financial intelligence and you know how to take care of money, it's going to find you. I promise. Shoot, just in the past few months, I've been able to raise over $200,000 of private investor money just because of my wherewithal to know how to displace and invest money. So that's I didn't even go, bro. I didn't even go ask for any of that money. People came to me and said, "Hey, I have money that I want to invest. Can you invest it for me, or can I be a part of your investment?" And I'm like, bro, say no more. That's it. So it comes to you whenever you put that out there, and that you have that financial intelligence. I promise, bro. I promise, because I had no intentions of doing that, right? It's just getting into a mindset of understanding how that game works and understanding what money really is, right? Since money isn't backed by gold and silver anymore, you got to understand it's backed by debt now. Money is backed by debt. And really, you have to think of money as a game of IOU, right? You have to learn the game and learn how to play the game, or the game is going to be played on you. And honestly, most people on the left side of the quadrant have the game played on them, most people on the left side of the graph in those two quadrants have the game played on them, while the right side are the ones playing the game on the people on the left, right? And so it's getting into that mindset of understanding that. And that's, bro, you're going to see some real breakthrough once you start looking at money differently and understanding that, right? So, yeah. I think, too, of course, go ahead.
Dang, I figured that. Okay. Okay. Understand, like when Alex says the game that's being played on you as for ENS, the business owners, who are they hiring of all people? They're not hiring other business owners, are they? Or they might have investors that are working with them, but they're hiring employees and self-employed people. So that's why Alex says that the game is being played on the employee or the ENS or the left side of the graph versus the right side, because at the end of the day, who's the one that's making the most profit from like the tax benefits and everything that we mentioned earlier? That's going to be the business owner, while the employee / self-employed are just going to be the one that's working for that business owner. So it's just essentially minding their business instead of your own.
Yep. Excuse me. And even too, I think a deeper scope of that too is understanding how, like, the game of debt too, and understanding that, like I said, money is debt, and the person that is indebted to the other is the person that will be poor, right? The person that is receiving the debt is the person that will be rich, right? In that sense. So understanding that too, and getting into that mindset is going to really help you, be able to make that transition. So yeah, of course, I want to talk about the tax benefits too for the investors as we wrap this up here in a minute. But yeah, taxes, like I said, is very important in each quadrant. And really, this in the I quadrant, when you start talking about taxes, this is the reason you start hearing the phrases "the rich get richer," really, because this is where a lot of wealthy people, they can make millions of dollars and not pay anything in taxes due to due to the way that this income is being generated, right? It's generated from assets as opposed to being generated from, working for it. So it's a completely different type of generation. And the government knows that these assets are providing things for society, so they allow them to take tax breaks, right? I mean, if you look at real estate investing, I think that's a perfect display of, tax breaks for investors, because, they have some of the craziest tax benefits, really. One of I think my favorite ones that I personally haven't done, but I'm sure I will someday, is the 1031 exchange, right? Because this is where you can essentially defer capital gains taxes to a later date. If you can make $1 million in a year, sell 3 properties on your portfolio, and you generate capital gains from it, you can essentially not have to pay taxes on that money that you just made, because you're going to, with a 1031 exchange, it allows you to put those profits into a similar asset class, such as another apartment complex or another set of properties or whatever the case may be. So in that sense, you are like that, those assets that generate that income are providing something to society. So the government said, all right, cool. Since you did that, we're going to let you defer these taxes in this case and not have to pay these taxes right now. So that's, but this is why the rich get richer, and this is why this is the place everybody, no matter how you're generating your money, this is where you need to be playing. Shoot, you need to make some room for yourself on that playground. This is where everybody needs to be.
I agree 1,000%, but for society, instead of them acknowledging that this is the root problem or the root reason why the rich are getting richer, they just keep saying, nah, if you make the most money, you should pay the most in taxes. And no, that's just not how the tax code works. It's not how the government works in America. And either you can choose to get with it, and well, before I even say that, for investors that are in the I quadrant, they're getting these huge tax breaks as incentives to keep providing services for the government that the government can't provide. So like providing housing that you were talking about, like with the real estate investing, how we'll be able to take advantage of capital gain, deferring capital gains taxes or doing 1031 exchange. I know for myself, and when I sell this house and after owning it for 2 years, what will I do? Make the profit with no capital gains taxes on it. And that's just one of the millions of ways that investors can take advantage of tax strategies by investing in real estate. And I can't wait till you actually utilize that one. That'll be my first one. My first tax strategy I really get to utilize, besides offsetting my rental income with different expenses. But that's one of the big ones that I'm looking forward to. But for Americans on the left, we can either choose to, on the left side of the graph, we can choose to either complain about how the tax code isn't fair or isn't right and just keep on doing what we've been doing, or we can acknowledge how the system works and take advantage of it and use it for ourselves like me and you are. But honestly, just use taxes as an incentive to invest in assets and keep keep more of your hard-earned money that you make.
Yeah, that's a good point. And really, the way I like to think of this whole, especially when we talk about the I quadrant, I like to really think of McDonald's too, because McDonald's is really an embodiment of operating on this right side of the graph in full, really, because I mean, McDonald's obviously is a business, and they, as I mentioned earlier, have systems, right, that are operated by people who are in the E quadrant that create, burgers and fries and all that other stuff, right? And those burgers, and they create revenue, and that revenue, is profit that's going to be used to purchase real estate. And the cycle just kind of repeats. So, they use burgers to make money. The money buys the real estate, and they can keep letting people franchise more restaurants while they own that real estate. And at the end of the day, that's why McDonald's owns more real estate globally than the entire Catholic Church. So that's kind of one of the I think the best ways to go about it, and that's the path that I would really recommend to anyone, and also teach to my kids too. I would say follow the McDonald's strategy, right? And I'm not saying I would tell anyone, not to go to school or anything. I would actually, definitely encourage my kids to go to school too, just to gain that, that technical expertise and technical knowledge in anything that they're interested in, because there is value in higher education. But I would, instead of saying, go get a job immediately after, I would say, why not start a business and then, invest the profits. Really, it's just telling them to seek financial freedom and not job security, because that's the biggest difference between the people on the left and the right. The people on the left seek that job security, and that's how they respond to fear, while the people on the right seek financial freedom as a response to fear. And even if you're someone that's listening to this right now and you are already went to school or whatever, and you're just, you're working as an employee, I would recommend you do the same thing. Start a side business, start a business in general, side hustle, and then, use that income and those profits to start investing, right? But no matter what, you have to get into that right side. You have to move to this right side. Seriously. This is where wealth, like I said, money is turned to wealth here. Seriously, on the B and the I, this is the best place to be. So, and one last thing I'm gonna mention too is that you need to always be aware of which quadrant the advice you get is coming from. All right, because you're gonna hear a lot of people say that investing is risky, but you gotta first look at which quadrant they're earning the most of their money from. If someone in the E quadrant is telling me investing is risky, I'm gonna look back at them and I'm gonna say, not investing is more risky. For sure. So, and then I'm gonna say you're a fool. So,
like
because
Alex would say,
yeah, but most people, they struggle financially because they're handed down bad advice from people like their parents or any authority figure or anything that they had no financial intelligence either, because that's where it comes from. When you don't have financial intelligence to pass down, then what you have to be passing down some sort of information to them. You're passing down bad information if it's not good information. So be aware of wherever you're getting your advice from. That's how I want to close that out.
Yep. And with that being said, I think the embodiment of this entire episode was understanding how you're raised, especially within your household and even at schools, is going to really dictate for you and even for your kids. If you're being a teacher for them, it's going to dictate your core values and what your mindset is, which inevitably will put you into one of these 4 quadrants. So understand that where you make the bulk of your money at will be dictated by your core values. And so that's why you should be mindful about what you're putting into your mind or for your children's minds. So identify what you're teaching them and figure out which values you're installing in them based off what we told you during this episode.
What's that? Facts. So, well, that's it for this episode of the Money Monopolizers podcast. New episodes will be released every Thursday and will be available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Just search Money Monopolizers wherever you listen to podcasts. We hope you learned something of value today. If you did, we'd appreciate if you rated us 5 stars and left us a review on Apple Podcasts. You can also find out more info about us on Twitter at The Monopolizers or on IG at Money Monopolizers. We post informative content on there that'll keep you engaged, so check that out and share those posts. But until then, we out of here.
You've been listening to the Money Monopolizers podcast, helping you take control of your financial destiny. To learn more about how you can be in control of your money, visit moneymonopolizers.com. We'll catch you next time when Alex and Marlon share more personal finance and wealth creation tips with you. Now it's time to take action.